welcome to another episode of the Right Space podcast, your space to breathe, dream, create, and be inspired. And with me today is a very, very special guest. I met this guy on LinkedIn. I don't know who slid into whose DMs, but we soon became colleagues. And he did this really weird thing that, as an introverted, socially awkward person, I didn't quite understand. He said, Hi, how are you? Once in a while. And at first, I was like, what is this guy doing? And it's as I got to know him that I realized that's like what normal people do in marketing and in networking. People say, Hi, how are you? They actually want to know what the people in their circuit are like. And since then, we've kind of become fast friends, and I am happy to ask you, dear listeners, to help me welcome my bestie, Lee Bergman.
Hi there. Hi, Robin. Thanks for having me on your podcast. So, as you mentioned, my name is Lee Bergman. I am head of design at an agency in London, and after hours, I am a mentor and a creative coach. And
Oh,
yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I must say that is like one of the first things that really stood out about you was just like how you actually really, really, really care about people. Um, and yeah, I thought my first question to you would be like, where does it stem from in terms of like just naturally you have like this natural ability of just like reaching out and really genuinely caring about the people in your network and caring about the people like on your LinkedIn. You have like 14,000 followers. And I feel like getting to know you, you really do have this desire to help people, even with your coaching. Where does that come from? Is it something you've always had, or something that grew over time? What's the story there?
Well, I wouldn't say it grew. I'd say it evolved. So yeah, there's many elements, parts of my story that sort of got me to this stage, into being the person I am today, and sort of um, you know arriving at the space where I want to help more people. And I think that one of the biggest things was that from a large part of my, I want to say youth, but my high school and then into my 20s, I spent it doing a lot of community work. So I was part of the Rotary family for a very, very long time. And for those who don't know, Rotary is an international service organization, and since the first day that I joined this massive family, I just felt this connection of other people putting service above self. And I had gone through the various levels of the organization, helping many people along the way, and then I got to a stage in my life where it was no longer aligning to my personal values. And that's nothing to say about the Rotary family. It was just no longer in my future, or what I thought was where I wanted to be. And then I started thinking a lot about my professional life and what sort of work I would like to eventually be doing. And what I found that is I really enjoyed speaking to other creatives, getting to know them, understanding their pain points, seeing where I can assist them, and then just seeing how much they've grown in the time that I have spoken to them, and the advice that I was able to give them, or just um, giving them a platform to speak and be themselves, without any judgment or fear of you know feedback or retribution.
That's that's really cool. And how would you say that your like the empathy that you show and this like your desire to really connect with people, how does that work with your role as like a designer in working in the company that you work with, or like in your career background where you've freelanced for a while, you've had a company of your own. um
So,
what role does it play?
so there are two main ways that I use empathy in my day-to-day life, in my professional life. One is making sure that I'm able to tap into what my clients and target market and what they're looking for. But beyond that, and something which is a bit more important to me, is how the people around me are feeling, and what they need and how I can assist them. For me, I believe that creating an environment for other creatives and anybody that's in your business where they feel that they are seen, heard, and that they feel like they're coming to work with a greater purpose. I believe if you're able to create that for them, that they will then in turn create that for our clients as a collective. So for me, it's sort of it's very much twofold, and I think that it comes together quite nicely.
I hear that, and it's something that that I've experienced from you as well, where you really are all about creating safe spaces for people. So let's say someone like me who has no idea how to do that. Um, what advice would you give? Could you like break it down in terms of like how one would approach that? Say someone wants to create a safe space in their business or a safe space on their team, for the people that they work with.
Yeah, but before I tell you how, the one thing I can say is that it doesn't come naturally to me. I don't think it comes naturally to most people. I think it's something that you have to work at constantly. I think of a bit of it like as a muscle. You know, you have to exercise the muscle often in order for it to become strong. And that is the same with empathy. I think that if you are put in situations where you're able to practice empathy and you do it often, I think you then eventually develop that muscle. In the case of how you can do it often, and there are many ways, I think, for me personally, I believe that if you are able to, instead of constantly talking, you're actually listening. I know that sounds really easy and typical, like it seems like, yeah, that's straightforward. But it's not because I think a lot of people, they want to be heard constantly instead of actually taking in what the other person is saying. I myself, I struggle with that often. But if you take the time just to maybe ask a question and then listen to what the person is saying, like actively listening, you're able to actually get to know what that other person is not only saying, but a feeling. The other thing is, I think it's and I think this sort of goes to the meaning of empathy, the definition of empathy, which is to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I think it's important to imagine yourself and imagine what they were going through, where they're coming from, so that you're able to really get a sense as to why are they reacting a certain way.
That's kind of where like EQ also comes in, where it's like self-awareness and also being aware of the other people in your sphere, and maybe like it requires a bit of, would you say it requires a bit of like paying attention and actually being interested in others instead of just like, there's a quote I heard in a roundtable the other day where someone quoted someone who basically said that people who are humble people, they rarely think of themselves. They will be the person who's thinking about someone else. And like in, so would you say that that is something that helps, like when you're entering into a space or planning, I don't know, like a meeting or something, thinking about the other instead of simply thinking about the the outcome or um, like the boxes that need to be ticked.
Of course, I think that it's always good to consider the other people before embarking on any journey. If you think of an event, for instance, yes, the purpose of the event is very important, but it's also good to understand who will be attending the event and what is the story behind them attending, why are they attending, what are the type of people that are attending. um, I think understanding them as a clientele, and that sort of goes into sort of like the persona marketing and that sort of thing, where it's good to have an understanding as to who your clientele are and understanding their pain points so that you're able to communicate to them better and actually serve them in a way that they are needing as opposed to what you think they need.
Yeah, what would you like to talk about?
I'm not sure this is your podcast, so you're supposed to be asking me questions.
That is my question. What would you like to talk about?
Um, So I have a question for you.
Okay.
What made you want to start podcasting?
It's mostly that I wanted to start a YouTube channel. I've been wanting to do a YouTube channel for a really long time. And like I have videos started off as a book blog, where I was reviewing books. I still have like my book blog, my booktube channel. I still have one, and it oddly enough gets more views than this channel. Even though I post nothing, it still gets views. But yeah, it's just this idea of becoming a YouTuber and the idea of building a YouTube channel because it has so many advantages in terms of like marketing. Um, it can drive like a lot of new inbound marketing opportunities. There are different collaborative opportunities, and podcasting seemed to be a very easy way to reach that goal. So instead of having to come up with video ideas and all that jazz, just inviting someone for an interview or having like this weekly interview thing where it doesn't necessarily have to be video, it could just be um, like there are no face podcasts on YouTube as well, um, or faceless podcasts where the people just have their thumbnail on there, um, and things like that. So it kind of took away the barrier of entry for me
Okay.
because there's a lot of mental block in terms of um, just recording, editing, putting something out there, and that was a big challenge. But you know, if I am having to interview someone and speak to them, I kind of have to show up. And once it's there, they gave me their time. So now I have to like put it out into the internet and into the universe because, you know, they gave me their time. So it's kind of been that.
Okay.
And it's been figuring out a way to reach my goal while still making it easier for myself to show up.
All right. And what has been the from your journey so far? What has been the lessons you've learned along the way?
One thing is that I've learned that I ask better questions when I'm comfortable, when I feel
Hmm.
comfortable, and when I feel like when I'm aware of the thing, like the meta of it all, or the behind the scenes of it all, or whatever, and I'm aware of that, I get super angsty and nervous, and I get in my head, and then I don't know what to ask, and I go blank and all that jazz. So there's that. So being comfortable with the person that I'm speaking to has been amazing. It's been really, really good. And also just preparing ahead of time, like diving
Yeah.
into their work, diving into their background, and like just making lists of questions where um, I'm really trying to interestingly like to dig into things that I've always wanted to ask them, basically. I think with my episode with the grandma last week, the Ghetto Country grandma, that episode was a lot of fun. We laughed a lot, and because one of the things I did with that episode was I asked her questions that I've always wanted to ask her, and I've noticed her say things, and I know that she's saying them strategically, but I
Hmm.
also didn't necessarily like I knew we were on the same page, but there was also like she was just voicing certain things in a way where like she's trying to make a point. And so I thought, you know what, if I bring that up, she's gonna get all juiced up and it's gonna be amazing. So that was fun. And a bit of like the trouble that I'm having right now is like I've asked you everything I've ever wanted to ask you.
Well, what is something you've not wanted to ask me? What do you think your listeners want to hear?
Your passion is in the other, a lot. And I suppose one thing that would be useful to mention or to look into and to dive into is let's say with someone who is very very other, like say you have someone who is very other focused, it's easy to how do you find the balance in the
So I
other
think
and
you
the self?
can you elaborate what you mean by other?
like other people. You're the person with this holding the spotlight, shining it on someone else. Um, and yeah, sometimes I just so one thing would be like that's something that I really really appreciate about you. But like in terms of your LinkedIn, why do you feel it's important to use your LinkedIn platform for that?
Because I believe that it's our responsibility to be able to actually raise the voices of those who can't. I think it's incredibly important to speak up when nobody else is. Um, Unfortunately, I don't always do that, and it's something that I catch myself trying to do more of constantly. Whereas with LinkedIn, I know that there are people listening because people have responded to me who have posted saying thank you for posting this, and for me, it just sort of gives that validation that what I'm doing is correct. Um, so I think things that I feel really passionate about, which is sort of obviously being an ally for LGBTQ, I and all the rest of the letters, and I do apologize for not mentioning all of them. Um, I as well as uh, being a feminist ally and neurodiversity ally. These are all things that I feel really, really passionate about. And if I had all the money and all the power in the world, these are the things that I would want to focus on and actually eradicate first and foremost. All right. Um, Unfortunately, I can't. So the next best thing is just raising, like you said, like putting the spotlight on those elements and parts that are not usually um, shown on. For instance, when I first started chatting about neurodiversity, I had somebody reach out to me in my LinkedIn saying, "Thank you so much for bringing these things up. I've never heard of it before. I didn't realize that all of these things are symptoms of ADHD." And it was that moment that I actually sort of realized that, maybe I should be doing more of this. Maybe I should be actually talking about things that the average person wouldn't necessarily know. Um,
Mm, mm.
just being a potential um, uh, signposter for information that will make their lives better.
That's cool. I like that. And yeah, that is definitely something that you do, and it's something that I think there are people who, when speaking to when consulting with clients about like their content strategy, that's one of the things that I kind of speak about, where you can either be a curator or a creator. You don't have to always be the one saying the things. There are people, you know, who are out there saying the things, and you can just like share what's already being said, and sometimes adding your 2 cents to it, which is something that you do, and it is like it is a strategy, a very valid one. And the other thing is like, so how do you balance the other focusedness, or the yeah that yeah how do you focus that, or balance that with yourself and telling your own story?
I think a lot of those elements are part of who I am. So there isn't. I don't really feel a need to balance it. I think that with the LGBTQ community, I have a lot of family members who are LGBTQ. I am personally neurodiverse. I have a lot of people in my life, so I feel, that I feel very strongly being a feminist ally. A lot of the things that I share are all parts of who I am. So when I do share that, it is part of my story and who I am and things that I stand for. And I think that once again, as I mentioned before, I think that it's our duty to stand up for things that we strongly believe in. It doesn't serve anybody if you're going to sit quietly and not actually stand up for the things that you feel strongly about. That's not to say that the things that I haven't spoken out about are things that I don't feel strongly about. These are just the things that are currently what I'm sort of pushing.
Something that the Ghetto Country grandmother says, or strongly believes in, is defining your personal brand. Like you mentioned, that it's easier to do those things in your personal brand capacity. Um, and specifically if you're like a business owner or someone like that, then just defining and setting those boundaries for yourself as a personal brand. Like, what are you comfortable sharing? And does this part that you're sharing, even though it's a part of yourself, it's a part of your identity, like, is it going to help, or is it going to help in terms of how your potential customer sees you. And I know something that she does brilliantly is um, like, well, she's the ghetto country grandmother. She has cigars everywhere. Like, there's cigars in her photos, in her profile photo. And someone who's not about that vibe is like, it creates a gate and it kind of keeps that person out. And that person self selects to, not work with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And similarly, I apparently, I have my confessions, like blog newsletter on LinkedIn, and then I separated the two because I realized that I was sharing a lot of like personal, reflective stuff, and I was also sharing like LinkedIn tips. I kind of just separated the two because like I felt like people, my target audience for my business, wasn't subscribing to that blog. And when I
Yeah.
separated the two, my new blog where I share like LinkedIn stuff and content creation stuff, that one actually has like a following of people who match my target audience. And in this
Okay.
one, I can still share my stuff. And someone mentioned the other day, since you announced to the whole world that you struggle with depression and anxiety, how are you? And I was like, okay, I put that out of there into the world. And now someone who reads it, who's subscribed to that thing, but also like, because I posted to my personal, like I share it on my personal LinkedIn,
Yeah.
anyone can read it, like a prospective customer can read it. But the fact is, if it impacts like the way that I work with you, it's either you're going to read about it and you're going to go into that initial conversation knowing, okay, this is what she's at, this is something she's working on, and be okay with it and still work with me, or you're going to be like, okay, I'm not about that. You're gonna self-select out.
Yeah.
um, and I think in that, in like when she said it, like, you announced this to the whole world. I was like, I did. Should I have? But I'm okay with it, and especially because like that's why I named the thing Confessions, because it's like a space for me to just say things
Yeah.
without wondering
I get that.
or without thinking about how it's going to affect
Yeah.
whatever in the moment, and then being okay with like I've made that decision. I've set those boundaries that I'm okay with sharing these things about my life, um and not
So
necessarily other
yeah,
things. So
I
I suppose you
completely
could
agree
do
with you.
that.
One of the very first Simon Sinek videos I ever watched, the very first one I ever watched, it's the reason why a lot of who I am has sort of transformed into this beautiful butterfly that I am, is that in the video he talks about how you you sort of attract the people that are most like you, right? And I think that's sort of what you're talking about. You if you go onto LinkedIn and you talk about being, um, and you sort of like you're incredibly vulnerable and talking about your real self and your true self, I think the people that then latch onto you are the people that are going to respect you and your work a bit more. I think it's a good thing, and I know it's a bit strange for LinkedIn, which is supposed to be this professional network, to sort of be touchy feely and speaking about things that are not usually spoken about in the workplace. But I think the time has come where, or the time should have come, where we are no longer sort of having this very hard separation between being vulnerable and being in the workplace. Because I think that in a space that you are for most of your life in the workplace, you shouldn't be holding back on being your true self all the time. And I think that LinkedIn allows for a good balance of that. It allows you to be your true self while still being, a business person. So I think what you're doing is really great. I think that I hope that the people that do end up working with you are the ones that agree with you and are able to align with you because they see themselves in you, or they're able to resonate. And again, that's sort of empathy, right? It's people who understand where you're coming from and are willing to work with you because they know your struggle, um, and they're able to relate to you more.
Or they're just like willing to see if you can actually get the job done, um and take a bet on you. There's that too. But yeah, it is that was very good. Thank you. um what's keeping you up at night?
Ooh, tough one. Tough one. I mean, obviously the right answer is always global warming. I think that the polar ice caps are melting at a rate faster
That is such a millennial
that is
answer.
possible. I mean, it's true. I think that, the world is the world is going to die at some stage, and what is the world that I'm leaving behind for my future offspring? Um, Aside from that, I have anxiety and ADHD. My mind is always going 100 kilometers an hour. There's a lot of things up there, and it's way too much to be unpacking before we go.
Mm.
So, yeah, what is keeping you up at night?
TV shows, literally
Mm,
TV shows. I think I let my phone die last night, and I think I had the best night of sleep I've had in a while. And like my dreams were actually, they weren't fuzzy, they were clear, like crystal clear. Um, and like I'm the kind of person who pays attention to my dreams. I feel like my subconscious is trying to tell me things, not tell me things, but work through things. Like if I had a bad day, then like in my dreams, like I would resolve that conflict in my dreams and potentially wake up with a solution. Because even though I'm asleep, my brain's not asleep, it's still doing its brain thing. Um, and I think just having my phone be dead was like the best gift I ever gave to myself. That's the other
yeah,
thing. Like that's the thing between the two of us. Like it's one of the reasons why I really love that you're my friend and that you're in my life, because you kind of inspire me to think of the other and to turn my lenses outward instead of focusing inward so much and focusing on myself so much. And even in terms of like my platform that I use, like you kind of inspire me to maybe like a certain post that normally I would be reserved to like, or to share something that I would be like reserved about sharing in a
yeah.
normal space, because I have drawn those lines and been like, this is what I'll talk about. This is not what I'm going to talk about. In terms of like my LinkedIn space, and um, yeah, that's it's like it's you've really like, just by being who you are, you've really impacted my life. And I know that like the people, just by observing the way that you use your platform, use LinkedIn as a professional and as a human being in this world, um, like you shared earlier, it's impacted others and it's impacted the people who follow you and engage with you. So yeah,
Thank you. I
that's
appreciate that.
a
The
real
one
gift.
thing that I would like to challenge you is to no longer use the word other to differentiate between alternative opinions and alternative um, focuses.
Okay, it's
I
just
think that,
a lens thing.
so I think especially in the podcast, you can cut this out, but I think saying the word other sort of makes it sound like the non-normal, which is like a
I get
box.
that.
You know what I mean?
I get
Um,
that.
so
I see
it's fine for
how
what
that can
is,
be.
but I think that, yeah,
I like there's a book I want to read called by Toni Morrison called Other, where it's like this whole thing about like how we've used that thing. Um, when I'm using it, it's like I know how I'm using it and I know
yes.
how I'm defining it, but I hear what you're saying. I do hear what you are saying. See, that is the value that you bring into the table and into my life. Um, I am grateful to have you as a friend. I hope that we'll be friends forever and that your offspring will call me auntie. Um,
Well, if there's a world to come back, if there's a world for them, then yeah, by all means.
um, Yeah, but thank you very much for joining us. Where can people find you
Um, Aside from at the local coffee shop, I think you can probably find me on LinkedIn.
on the
Is
internet?
is on LinkedIn. It's where I live.
Okay, cool. So go check him out on LinkedIn, see what he's up to. And yeah, hopefully, if I twist his arm, he'll be back for future
Yeah, that'd be great.
episodes. That would be great. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you guys for listening. I will be back with you next Friday, same time, same hopefully same meeting, same time, same space. Please subscribe, drop a link, and share a question that we can ask Lee when he comes back in the comments or at me on LinkedIn at Robyn-Lee Samuels. Yes, that is where it is, just there. Uh, Bye before I keep speaking.
Bye. Thanks again. Thanks for having me.